Whispers in the Snow, the Battle of the Bulge Ghosts. I never thought I'd find myself back in the heart of the Battle of the Bulge. Decades after the war, memories had long faded, replaced by the quiet routine of civilian life. Yet, something inexplicable drew me back to those frozen woods of Belgium, a place where history and horror intertwine beneath the relentless snowfall. My name is Jack Turner, a retired Army sergeant haunted by fragments of a past I couldn't fully grasp. In the years following World War II, I struggled to reconcile the brotherhood forged in battle with the unimaginable losses we endured. Visiting the Battle of the Bulge was never on my list of therapeutic retreats, but a chance encounter with an old war buddy reignited the embers of old fears and forgotten horrors. Tommy Harris, my closest friend from Company B, had disappeared years ago, leaving behind only whispers of his quest to uncover the supernatural tales that emerged from our time in the Ardennes. His last letter spoke of ghosts that never rest, a phrase that lingered in my mind like a persistent shadow when I received his unsent letter years later, addressed to no one in particular. I knew I had to follow his footsteps. The winter of 1985 was merciless, with temperatures plunging to record lows and snowstorms transforming the landscape into an unending white abyss. Armed with my old journal, photographs, and a determination to find Tommy, I ventured into the remnants of the Ardennes forest, where the echoes of battle still whispered through the trees. The first few days were arduous. The cold gnawed at my bones, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional howl of a distant wolf or the crunch of snow underfoot. I set up camp near a ridge overlooking the battlefield, the remnants of trenches and shattered trees serving as silent witnesses to the carnage that had unfolded here. Nights were the hardest, as darkness enveloped the forest. The temperature dropped further, and an eerie stillness settled over the land. It was during one such night that I first heard the whispers, soft, indistinct voices carried by the wind, speaking in a language I couldn't comprehend. I tried to rationalize them as remnants of the storm, but deep down, I felt an unsettling presence watching me. One evening, as I reviewed my photographs by the dim light of my lantern, I noticed something strange. In several shots taken during the day, faint figures appeared in the background, ghostly apparitions of soldiers in tattered uniforms, their faces etched with sorrow and desperation. My heart raced as I realized I wasn't alone. The ghosts of the Battle of the Bulge were still here, their restless spirits unable to find peace. Determined to uncover the truth behind these spectral sightings, I delved into local lore and interviewed nearby villagers who still held the memories of the war. They spoke of unexplained phenomena, sudden drops in temperature, eerie laughter echoing through the trees, and apparitions appearing in the foggy mornings. Some believed the spirits were warning of impending doom, while others thought they were trapped souls reliving their final moments. One night, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I decided to explore an old chapel that had served as a makeshift hospital during the battle. The building stood in eerie silence, its windows shattered and doors hanging ajar. As I stepped inside, the air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. The remnants of makeshift beds and broken medical equipment lay scattered, a testament to the desperation that had once filled these walls. I set up my equipment, placing cameras and audio recorders in strategic locations. As midnight approached, the temperature plummeted, and a dense fog crept through the broken windows, enveloping the chapel in a ghostly haze. It was then that I heard it, a soft, mournful wail that seemed to emanate from the very walls. The sound was both beautiful and terrifying, a haunting melody that tugged at the remnants of my sanity. Suddenly, the chapel was filled with apparitions. Soldiers materialized out of the fog, their eyes hollow and expressions anguished. They moved slowly, reliving their last moments with a tragic inevitability. One figure, a young lieutenant, approached me, his face pale and eyes filled with a sorrow that mirrored my own. "Why do you disturb us?" he whispered, his voice echoing through the chapel. I'm looking for my friend, Tommy," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. The lieutenant's expression softened, a flicker of recognition passing through his eyes. He was lost to the shadows, seeking answers beyond the living. Beware the darkness that dwells here. With those words, the apparitions began to fade, their sorrowful gazes lingering as they disappeared into the fog. The temperature rose slightly, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted, leaving me alone in the chapel with a newfound sense of urgency. Days turned into weeks as I continued my search, following the spectral clues left by the restless spirits. Each encounter deepened the mystery, revealing fragments of Tommy's quest to understand the supernatural forces that had plagued us during the war. His notes spoke of ancient rituals, restless spirits, and a darkness that sought to consume both the living and the dead. One night, as the snowstorm raged outside, I received a message through one of my audio recorders, a desperate plea for help, distorted by static but unmistakably human. It was Tommy's voice, guiding me to a hidden section of the forest where the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest. Armed with my journal and a newfound determination, I ventured deeper into the wilderness, the storm intensifying with each step. After hours of trekking through the blinding snow, I stumbled upon an ancient stone circle, partially buried in the snow. The air was thick with magic, palpable force that made my skin crawl. In the center of the circle stood a solitary figure, Tommy, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and obsession. Around him, the spectral forms of fallen soldiers swirled, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. "Tommy!" I called out, rushing toward him. But as I approached, the ground beneath us seemed to come alive, the snow shifting and swirling in unnatural patterns. The apparitions closed in, their ghostly hands reaching out to claim us both. "We need to perform the ritual," Tommy shouted over the cacophony of whispers. "Only by appeasing the spirits can we free ourselves." I hesitated, torn between the urge to flee and the need to save my friend. "What ritual?" I demanded, my voice shaky. Tommy pointed to an ancient altar at the edge of the stone circle, covered in frost and intricate carvings. "We have to honor their memories, let their pain be acknowledged. Only then can the spirits find peace." With no other choice, we began the ritual, reciting the ancient incantations from Tommy's notes. The air grew colder, the snowstorm raging outside matching the turmoil within the stone circle. The apparitions became more agitated, their whispers turning into anguished cries as the ritual progressed. As we reached the final lines, a blinding light enveloped the altar, and the spirits began to dissipate, their forms dissolving into the night sky. The temperature rose, the oppressive darkness lifting as a sense of calm settled over the forest. The snowstorm subsided, leaving behind a serene, moonlit landscape. Exhausted but hopeful, I turned to Tommy, who looked pale but relieved. "It's done," he whispered. "The spirits are at peace." But our relief was short-lived. As we made our way back through the now tranquil forest, the shadows seemed to deepen, and a lingering presence watched us from the edges of our vision. The legends of the Battle of the Bulge ghosts had been quelled, but something still lingered, a reminder that the darkness of war leaves scars that time cannot easily erase. When I returned to civilization, the story of our encounter spread quickly, adding a new chapter to the haunted legacy of the Villisca Axe Murder House. The townsfolk listened with a mix of skepticism and fear, their belief in the supernatural shaken by the tangible evidence we brought back. Years have passed since that harrowing winter, but the memories remain vivid, etched into my mind like the frost on the ancient stones. The Battle of the Bulge ghosts taught me that some battles are fought not just with weapons and strategy, but with the very essence of our souls. And as long as winter descends upon the Northwoods, the whispers of the fallen will continue to echo through the snow, a haunting reminder of the thin line between life and death, peace and eternal unrest. So, as you brave the cold and gather with your loved ones this winter, remember the stories of those who came before us. Cherish each moment, honor the memories of the past, and embrace the warmth that keeps the darkness at bay. For in the heart of every snowstorm lies both beauty and terror, and it is our duty to protect the light that preserves our humanity against the shadows that seek to consume it. Story number 2. Whispers in the Snow, the Wendigo's Hunger. I never believed in the supernatural, growing up in the vast, snow-covered expanses of northern Minnesota. I attributed strange occurrences to the harshness of nature and the isolation it brought. But that belief was shattered one bitter winter night, forever altering my understanding of fear and survival. My name is Ethan Miller, and I was 32 years old when I ventured into the heart of the Canadian Rockies, a place where legends and reality blur beneath layers of relentless snow. As a wildlife biologist, my job was to study the elusive creatures that thrived in these unforgiving climates. Yet, nothing in my professional career had prepared me for the nightmare that awaited. It was the winter of 1995 when I received a call from an old colleague, Dr. Laura Bennett. She had been researching indigenous folklore and had stumbled upon references to the Wendigo, a malevolent spirit from Algonquian mythology, described as a towering, emaciated creature with pale, mottled skin and glowing eyes. The Wendigo was said to embody insatiable greed and hunger, often linked to cannibalism during times of extreme famine. Intrigued by the intersection of folklore and wildlife, I agreed to join her expedition deep into the remote forests of northern Canada. Our goal was to uncover any connections between the Wendigo legends and potential unknown species that might exist in these uncharted territories. We set out in early December, the air crisp and the snow beginning to blanket the ground in pristine white. The journey was grueling, with each step sinking into the soft powder and the biting cold numbing our limbs. As we ventured deeper into the wilderness, the landscape transformed into a silent, monochromatic world where only the crunch of our footsteps and the whisper of the wind broke the stillness. One evening, after days of trekking through dense forests and scaling icy ridges, we established camp near a frozen lake. The sky was a canvas of stars, the Milky Way stretching across the heavens in a dazzling display. We sat around the fire, sharing stories to stave off the creeping unease that came with isolation. Laura was the first to bring up the Wendigo. They say the Wendigo is more than just a creature. It's a curse, a transformation triggered by desperation and hunger. She explained, her breath visible in the frigid air. In some tribes, it was believed that those who succumbed to cannibalism during famine became Wendigos themselves, eternal wanderers driven by an unending hunger. I listened, fascinated but skeptical. So, it's like a spirit that takes over a person. Exactly, Laura replied. A person can become a Wendigo when they lose their humanity to the primal urge to survive at any cost. As the night wore on, the temperature dropped further, and the fire's warmth seemed to wane against the encroaching cold. That's when we heard it, a soft, rhythmic thudding sound, like heavy footsteps moving through the snow. We froze, hearts pounding, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the flickering light. Did you hear that? I whispered, barely audible over the crackling fire. Laura nodded, her face pale. It's probably just an animal, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. But the sound persisted, growing louder and more deliberate. It wasn't the uneven gait of a deer or the padded steps of a fox. It was something else, something larger, more purposeful. We grabbed our gear, weapons at the ready, and cautiously approached the edge of our campsite. Through the swirling snow, a figure emerged, a hulking, gaunt silhouette, its form barely distinguishable against the white backdrop. As it drew closer, the details became horrifyingly clear. The creature stood tall and thin, the skin pale and mottled, eyes glowing with an unnatural hunger. It moved with a silent, predatory grace, each step leaving deep impressions in the snow. "Run," Laura hissed, her voice trembling, but my legs felt like lead, my body paralyzed by fear. The Wendigo stopped just feet away, its hollow eyes fixed on me. I could feel its malevolent intent, a force that seemed to pierce through me, igniting every primal fear within. Suddenly, It lunged forward with supernatural speed. Its claws extended. I barely managed to dodge, stumbling backward as the creature advanced relentlessly. The cold around me intensified, the air turning frigid as if the very essence of winter had been summoned to aid this abomination. "We have to fight back," I shouted, pulling Laura and our equipment close. But the Wendigo was too powerful, too driven by its insatiable hunger. It swiped at us, missing by inches, but the impact sent a shockwave through the ground, knocking us off our feet. We scrambled to our feet, retreating toward the safety of our makeshift shelter. But the creature pursued us with unyielding determination. Back at camp, we barricaded the entrance, hearts racing and breaths visible in the icy air. The Wendigo circled the perimeter, his presence a constant, oppressive force that seemed to drain the warmth from the fire and our very souls. The howling wind carried its haunting cries, echoing through the night like the screams of the damned. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional thud of the Wendigo's attempts to breach our defenses. We huddled together, the reality of our situation sinking in. We were alone in the wilderness, hunted by a creature born of legend and driven by an eternal hunger. As dawn broke, the storm finally began to subside, leaving the forest in a deceptive calm. We cautiously emerged from our shelter, the first light of day casting long shadows on the snow-covered ground. The Wendigo was nowhere to be seen, but the fear remained, a lingering presence that haunted our every step. We packed up our gear, determined to leave the cursed land behind us. But the memory of that night, the relentless pursuit, and the horrifying visage of the Wendigo stayed with us, a dark reminder of the thin line between myth and reality. Years have passed since that fateful winter, but the experience left an indelible mark on my soul. The Wendigo became more than just a legend. It became a symbol of the darkness that can lie within us all, a manifestation of our deepest fears and the primal instincts that drive us to survive at any cost. I often find myself gazing into the vast, snowy landscapes, the silence broken only by the whisper of the wind, wondering if the Wendigo still roams these forests, forever searching for its next victim. The stories of Swift Runner and others who succumbed to the Wendigo's curse serve as cautionary tales, reminders that desperation can lead to unimaginable horrors. So, as you venture into the wilderness this winter, remember the legend of the Wendigo, cherish each moment, embrace the warmth of your hearth, and heed the warnings of those who have faced the darkness. For in the heart of the coldest nights lies both beauty and terror, and it is our duty to protect the light that keeps the shadows at bay. Story number 3. Whispers in the Walls, the Villisca Axe Murder House. I never believed in ghosts or haunted houses. Growing up in the Midwest, surrounded by sprawling cornfields and quaint small towns, my skepticism was reinforced by the practical, no-nonsense upbringing my parents provided. But some places defy logic, and some stories linger in the shadows long enough to seep into your very soul. The Villisca Axe Murder House was one such place, a relic of unspeakable horror that had cast a long, dark shadow over the town of Villisca, Iowa, for over a century. My name is Michael Turner, and I was 32 years old when my journey to uncover the truth behind the Villisca Axe Murder House began. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for the macabre, I sought out stories that others wouldn't dare to touch. The legend of the Villisca murders had always intrigued me, but it wasn't until a local historian reached out that I decided to delve deeper into its grim history. The year was 1985, a time when the whispers of Villisca's haunted past were still fresh in the minds of the townsfolk. The murders, committed on June 9, 1912, had left an indelible mark on the community. A family of 6, along with 2 guests, had been brutally slaughtered with an axe in their own home, leaving the town in a state of perpetual fear and fascination. Decades later, the house still stood, its Victorian facade a stark contrast to the serene landscapes of northern Iowa. I arrived in Villisca on a crisp autumn morning, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of fallen leaves. The town was small, with a population of just over 1,000. And the villagers eyed me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The Villisca Axe Murder House was located on a quiet street, its presence commanding attention despite the picturesque surroundings. The house itself was a grand structure, with ornate woodwork and large windows that seemed to watch your every move. The wrought iron fence surrounding the property was pristine, a stark reminder of the order and normalcy that contrasted so sharply with the chaos that had once erupted within its walls. As I approached, I felt an inexplicable chill, as if the very air around the house was infused with sorrow and anger. I had arranged to meet with Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell, a descendant of one of the victims and a local historian who had dedicated her life to preserving the town's history. Her family had been directly affected by the tragedy, and her insights were invaluable to my investigation. "Mr. Turner, welcome to Villisca." She greeted me warmly, though her eyes held a sadness that spoke volumes. "I hope you're prepared for what you might uncover. I've heard the stories, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm here to understand what really happened here and why this house continues to draw so much attention," I replied, my voice steady despite the unease I felt. She nodded, leading me through the front door and into a sitting room that had been meticulously maintained over the years. The Villisca murders were unlike any other. The brutality, the lack of motive, it left us all searching for answers. Over the years, many have claimed to experience strange occurrences here, especially during the colder months. As we sat by the fireplace, Mrs. Mitchell began to recount the events of that fateful night. Her voice trembled as she spoke of the screams that pierced the summer air, the sound of an axe swinging mercilessly, and the eerie calm that followed the massacre. "They say the spirits of those lost souls still roam these halls, unable to find peace." I listened intently, taking notes and asking questions that delved deeper into the supernatural aspects. "Have there been any recent incidents or reports of paranormal activity?" She sighed, her gaze distant. "Yes, particularly in the winter months. Visitors have reported feeling sudden drops in temperature, hearing footsteps where no one should be, and seeing apparitions in the bedrooms. It's as if the house itself is trying to communicate, to keep the memory of that night alive." Determined to witness these phenomena firsthand, I decided to spend the night in the house. Mrs. Mitchell provided me with a guided tour, pointing out the rooms where the murders had taken place and sharing more stories from those who had encountered the supernatural. As evening approached, I settled into the guest room, a small, cozy space with a large bed and a window overlooking the snow-covered yard. The temperature inside the house was unusually cold for June, a stark contrast to the warm summer air outside. I lit a candle, its flickering flame casting long shadows on the walls, and began to document my observations. The first few hours were uneventful, filled with the sounds of the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional creak of the house settling. But as midnight approached, an oppressive silence descended upon the house, broken only by the soft ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. That's when I heard it, a faint whisper, like a distant conversation carried on the wind. I strained to listen, trying to make out the words, but the sound was elusive, always just out of reach. My heart pounded in my chest as I rose from the bed, drawn toward the source of the noise. I walked down the dimly lit hallway, the candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls. As I reached the end of the corridor, I noticed the door to the master bedroom was slightly ajar. A chill ran down my spine as I approached, the temperature dropping even further. Pushing the door open, I was met with a sight that made my blood run cold. The room was dark, the only light coming from the moonlight streaming through the window. In the center stood a figure, tall and gaunt, the skin pale and icy, eyes hollow and lifeless. It was as if a snowman had come to life, its form distorted and unnaturally elongated. I froze, unable to move as the figure turned to face me, its expression one of sorrow and longing. "Why won't you let us rest?" it whispered, the voice echoing through the room like the mournful cry of the wind. I stammered, trying to find my voice. I don't know what you want." The figure began to move toward me, each step deliberate and slow. "You must remember us," it said, its voice growing stronger. "Remember our pain, our loss." Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness as the candle extinguished itself, leaving me in pitch blackness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my flashlight, but the beam refused to light up the room. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, filling my mind with images of that tragic night. The screams, the blood, the lifeless bodies strewn across the floor. In the darkness, I felt a cold hand brush against my shoulder, sending a shiver down my spine. I turned around, but there was nothing there. The air was thick with the presence of the lost souls, their anguish palpable as they relived their final moments. Desperate to escape, I ran back to the hallway, my footsteps echoing in the silent house. But no matter how fast I moved, the whispers followed me, a constant reminder of the horror that had taken place within these walls. The house seemed to warp around me, corridors stretching endlessly, doors leading to nowhere. I found myself back in the master bedroom, the figure of the snowman standing once more before me. "You must help us find peace," it pleaded, its eyes filled with a haunting desperation. I sank to the floor, my mind racing for answers. "How? What can I do?" The figure extended a hand, its touch sending a surge of icy energy through me. "Remember our story. Share our pain. Let the world know our suffering." As the words sank in, the temperature began to rise, the oppressive darkness lifting as a sense of calm washed over the room. The figure began to fade, its form dissolving into the air like mist in the morning sun. "Thank you," it whispered, and with that, it was gone. I stood there, trembling and breathless, the weight of the house's history pressing down on me. The first light of dawn filtered through the window, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the night's horrors. Exhausted but resolute, I knew what I had to do. Over the following weeks, I worked tirelessly to document the stories of the Villisca Axe Murder House, gathering testimonies from those who had experienced the supernatural phenomena firsthand. I pieced together the fragmented history of the murders, uncovering details that had long been forgotten or overlooked. It became clear that the house was a nexus of pain and tragedy, a place where the spirits of the victims were trapped, unable to move on. I shared my findings through articles, books, and interviews, hoping to shed light on the darkness that lingered within the walls of the Villisca Axe Murder House. The response was overwhelming, with many expressing a newfound respect for the spirits and a desire to help them find peace. Rituals were performed, prayers were said, and the community came together to honor the memories of those lost. Years have passed since that harrowing night, and the Villisca Axe Murder House remains a place of solemn reverence. The supernatural occurrences have diminished, but the memory of the spirits lingers, a testament to the enduring power of loss and the human need for closure. The house stands as a reminder that some places hold secrets too dark to ever be fully understood, their stories etched into the fabric of time. I often visit Villisca, not out of fear, but out of a sense of duty to remember and honor those who were taken too soon. Standing before the house, I feel a connection to the past, a bridge between the living and the dead. The whispers in the shadows remind me that the stories we tell are not just tales of the past, but echoes that resonate through time, shaping our understanding of fear, loss, and the eternal quest for peace. One winter night, years after my first encounter, I found myself standing in front of the house once more. The snow had fallen thick and heavy, cloaking the landscape in a serene, white blanket. The moon hung low in the sky, casting silvery light on the house's facade. I approached cautiously, the memories of that night flooding back with every step. Inside, the house was quiet, almost peaceful. I walked through the halls, now adorned with seasonal decorations and the warmth of candlelight, remnants of the community's ongoing efforts to honor the spirits. As I reached the master bedroom, the room felt different, calmer, as if the spirits had finally found the closure they so desperately needed. I sat down on the edge of the bed, gazing at the window where the apparition of the snowman had once appeared. The air was still, the only sound the soft crackling of the fireplace. I felt a presence, not menacing, but comforting, a sense of gratitude and peace. "Thank you," I whispered, the words hanging in the air like a fragile promise. The room seemed to glow with a soft light, and the shadows that once danced with malevolent intent now seemed to shimmer with a gentle, ethereal beauty. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the house lift, replaced by a serene calm that enveloped me. When I opened them, there was nothing, just the tranquil scene of the snow-covered landscape outside the window. The spirits had found their peace, their stories finally told and remembered. The Villisca Axe Murder House stood as a monument to their lives and their suffering, a place where the past and present intertwined in a delicate balance of memory and healing. As I left the house that night, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, each one a silent testament to the enduring legacy of those lost souls. The whispers in the walls had transformed from cries of pain to murmurs of gratitude, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is hope for redemption and peace. The Villisca Axe Murder House continues to draw visitors, each one seeking to understand the mysteries that lie within. But those who have experienced its haunting presence know that it is not just a place of fear, but a sanctuary for the lost, a reminder of the enduring power of love and the human spirit's ability to transcend even the greatest tragedies. So, as you hear the stories of Villisca and its haunted legacy, remember the voices of those who were silenced and the darkness that once consumed them. Cherish each moment, honor the memories of the past, and embrace the light that keeps the shadows at bay. For in the heart of every haunted house lies a story waiting to be told, a whisper in the darkness yearning to be heard, and a reminder that some spirits are forever bound by the love and loss they endured.